Everyone, welcome to our first interview in this newsletter. We have with us Dr. Jeff Dodge, who is at Veritas Church in Iowa City. Go Cyclones.
That's
Uh,
mean. That's not the way to start off this
this,
interview.
this is one of my questions later, actually, is why Iowa State is better than Iowa. But anyway, at football, at football.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Jeff's been doing this type of theological education in the church for a really long time. And so we thought that it'd be a great place to start. Jeff and I have some history in that we were co-workers at Cornerstone for a bit. And then when Jeff transitioned to Iowa City, I took over what he was doing at Cornerstone. And then I also left and came to Omaha. But there's a lot more sort of story that we can tell. We went to China together and taught over there. That was super fun. But maybe, Jeff, you can start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your ministry right now.
Yeah. By the way, I love the raccoon over your shoulder.
We're big on taxidermy here. Yeah. Every year we have Christmas pictures that people can take, and we bring in all the taxidermy so that
Wow.
so this raccoon is much beloved.
That's a beautiful thing. Anyway, yeah. So like Matt said, at Veritas Church in Iowa City. So I'm a teaching pastor here, so do about half the preaching on Sunday mornings and so forth. Also lead up in just other pastoral duties of the connection groups and discipleship and training and just pastoral duties in general, as in any local church. But then specifically, we have what we call Veritas School of Theology, which is accredited through Midwestern Seminary in Kansas City. Where people can actually, now we're redoing it again, Matt. Actually, we're kind of packaging what we offer, but now we will be able to offer a full 36 credit hour degree, master's degree program, starting this next, after we finish this academic year. The following year, we're going to start that one, and people will be able to finish off a whole master's degree program right here locally. So it's pretty fun. But like last night, I came in, just spent, it had been such a long slog. I'm leaving for Africa in a couple of days, and just kind of came into the room a little gassed for our theology program class last night. But the room is full. We almost have zero absenteeism at all. They're all there all the time, and it's just electric. And so immediately I'm all in. You know what I mean? So it's just such a delight to see the level of enthusiasm and ears to hear, and to do that in a local church is just my dream come true. That's what I've been striving for a lot of years, and seeing it happen right here is just a blast. So yeah, anytime I hear about other people doing it in other contexts, I just want to cheer everybody on, because it's kind of a little bit of a unicorn still, to have this much of a thriving thing, and may its tribe increase, so.
Give us some background, Jeff, because I know that you were kind of one of the forerunners of this. How did this start? Give us some history.
Yeah. Well, so like Matt said, I was at Cornerstone Church in Ames, and so we had this thriving college ministry and a lot of budding, leaders coming up, these men and women who came up through Iowa State. Many of them came to Christ at Iowa State. But then it seemed like for those that really wanted to go into vocational ministry, if they wanted to get formal theological training, they were having to go somewhere else to find that. I mean, we were dabbling in some equipping and doing some different things, but really, I felt like in a university setting, accreditation was still a pretty important deal. Like that's still a high value in university communities. And so yeah, just became convinced that we really could work on something, that we could get accredited theological training at our local church. So started working with Midwestern. Thankfully, Midwestern was hobbling along at that point. They were in a pretty weak position. The addition of Dr.
So you
Allen
took advantage of them.
took advantage of them, absolutely. And they us, they needed students. We needed a collaboration with us. And Dr. Allen and I laugh about that, but it's actually really true. They were desperate. We were desperate. They'd never done anything like what I was proposing. I'd never done anything like I was proposing. So my first doctorate, actually the dissertation that I wrote for that one, was on creating the very thing that we did, because they were saying, we need a roadmap. Can you build it out for us as your dissertation. It was a D-Min, so that worked really well as more of a practical dissertation as opposed to when I got my PhD. So anyway, yeah, we kind of worked it out together, and it has just continued to build. And then I ended up joining after I got my PhD. Then I got a faculty position with Midwestern, which I only go down there a couple times a year, and I lead these PhD seminars for a week at a time. But it actually keeps me more closely connected with Midwestern and just with the academy side of this, because I didn't go into this because I'm anti-academy. I think the academy has a really important role to play in theological education. I'm just saying we should have also the alternative of doing that in-house, in the local church. So I've enjoyed both worlds, and actually even teaching those seminars allows me to scratch an itch academically that is fun. That's an entirely different kind of a group, than what we have on Monday nights here and stuff. So anyway, I like that collaborative thing. I think they're really valuing what we're doing up here. I certainly value what's going on the campus down there in Kansas City. And so it's really become a very good partnership together. So yeah, we call ours Veritas School of Theology. And it's cool too, because one of the things you can do when you're in a local church. So here in Iowa City, we have this huge research hospital. We're going to be teaching ethics. One of the classes we're going to teach is ethics. Well, the chief ethicist for the research hospital is a really devout Christian, like a real one, a real Christian. And so I've had him on my back porch. We've swapped gospel, stories and stuff. Well, we're going to be able to have him come in and teach some of our medical folks medical ethics, but he lives right here. You know what I mean? He's right down there. So anyway, I'm just saying, like, when you're at a local church and a little bit more, I guess, nimble, because of the kind of things we're doing, we can be flexible enough to, create these hybrid kind of classes and different things that if you were at an academy, it'd be harder, right? Because those are more rigidly designed. And so anyway, I just feel like that adaptability is really a strong suit for what we're doing in the local church. And yeah, feel very spoiled that I get to do this stuff. So.
It's good. You guys have any questions to follow up with? I guess I'll jump back. One thing that I would love for you to explain is maybe a little bit more about how this worked with Salt Company and church planning.
Yeah.
Because I think when I looked at what we had established at CST at the beginning, it was the coolest ministry structure I'd ever been a part of. So
wow. Yeah, I mean, uniquely, so I don't think I've told a lot of people that not every local church is as tied to a university community as we are. And so this wouldn't necessarily work everywhere. So uniquely, we've got all these student leaders who are just coming out of their undergrad. They've, graduated with an undergrad degree. Many of them will actually go on back into their vocation that they've been training for, but they'll take a couple of years to either just work with the Salt Company or university ministry while also getting some theological education. And then they'll pivot back and become a physical therapist or an educator or whatever they were going to be. Many of them end up deciding to go into vocational ministry also. And so it is a little bit of a unique lab, I guess, that we have, and we had also at Iowa State. But it's beautiful. So they make up a pretty good chunk of our student population. But because of that, other people kind of get they draft into this thing. And so we've got a lot of community people. So like right now, I think we've got this year, we've got like 50, 52 or something like that, students. And I would say, and some of those also do it remotely. Like we've got people that live in Thailand and they beam in remotely. Not many of those, but some. But I would say, yeah, probably over, I have to 2/3. If Alyssa were here, our coordinator, she would be able to give you exact numbers, but half to 2/3 are maybe the 20 somethings. And then the rest are older than that. but it creates a great, incredible vibe of
Yeah.
really committed learners,
Yeah.
in the room.
The,
So
the pipeline from being a freshman at Iowa State or a freshman at Iowa
yeah,
to being a leader within the salt company, to
yeah,
coming on staff, to being trained through this and then being sent out was just
yeah.
so fun to walk people through that.
Yeah, some of our students in the School of Theology, yep, came to Christ at the University of Iowa, were
Mhm.
discipled, became leaders, trained, et cetera, and then jumped in serving both the ministry that they were, served by, and then also jumping into education. So yeah, it becomes this beautiful flow, discipleship flow. So yeah.
Yeah. Do you talked about church and academy. Uh, it sounds like you have a pretty positive take on how that can work together.
Yeah.
Maybe some of us on the call, I'm not sure who, might have a little bit more cynical view of the relationship between church
Legit.
and academy, right? Like it seems like there's a significant divide where churches aren't really valuing what the academy is doing, and the academy isn't really paying attention to what the church needs.
Oh, for sure.
So I'm just curious, like, do you see that as a serious problem, and what do you see happening 20 years from now?
Yeah. Oh, it's a huge problem. Absolutely. I think seminaries were some of the last to even get on board with distance learning and some of those different things. They felt like, especially the really conservative seminaries, felt like they were the bastion of orthodoxy, and we don't want the possibility of it going south, by hiring out, people out there somewhere. We want to have a lot of control. And I appreciate that, that they were desiring to hold on faithfully to they were entrusted with training and wanted to keep orthodoxy preserved there. So I appreciate that defensiveness, maybe, from getting into online courses and distance learning things when other universities were doing that. So yeah, I appreciate that. And I think churches also can be quite suspicious of the seminaries because it seems like this elitist kind of a thing. And they see those seminaries looking at local churches thinking they're inept. How could they ever do this? So I'm just saying, like, that is true. That maybe not hostility, but suspicion at least is true. So I'm just saying, for us at least, I think the fact that we had to cobble this thing together, Midwestern and us, that allowed for a growing partnership, and we made some mistakes along the way, and we've had to redo some things. I just had to redo a whole memorandum of understanding just a few weeks ago, and so it's not common, right? So we have to figure it out together. But I am happy to say that we have an incredibly good, I think, mutually beneficial. I think we benefit actually more than Midwestern, and that's saying something, that they it's not charity. We actually give some tuition back to them, but they really are super helpful to us. We couldn't do what we're doing without and they don't need us, right? They're a much bigger thing than they were back in the day when we started this thing. They don't really need us. So they're really doing this for us. And I appreciate that a ton. Yeah.
It's good.
Why do you think that graduate level theological training is important to have in the local church to make that connection there?
Yeah. Well, again, I would even say the accreditation part, like we're seeking, isn't essential. I really don't think it is. And in fact, in most communities, maybe it would be inconsequential whether it was accredited or not. You could do exactly the same thing we're doing without accreditation, right? And the same education would be going on. So again, for us, I just feel like in this setting, you can't hardly throw a rock around here and not hit somebody with a master's or certainly even doctoral degree. And so it's just a higher value in these academic communities. I live in a community of about 100, call it roughly 100,000 people. Well, the university is 30,000 people. So the shadow of the university looms very strong on this place. So here's what I'd say. if I had to choose between doing it in an accredited way, or if that wasn't possible, just do it without accreditation, 1,000% we'd be doing what we're doing without accreditation. But when you can work it out so that people can actually also earn that sheepskin that a lot of people in culture still find important, to be able to demonstrate that somebody looked over your shoulder and made sure you actually got a degree. When it can happen, I think, man, do that, and even work hard to do that. If all those opportunities fall and you're not able to, still, we should feel as local churches the need to train young men and women theologically, right? So that's the essential thing. Accreditation is just a bonus that I think when possible, we should have it. Is that what did I answer that very? Okay.
Yeah, that's great. And that was going to be my next question on why, if not the accreditation, why would it still be important for us to do those like graduate level theological classes in the local church,
100%
to train and equip our people? Yeah.
And we do, like I was saying, and it's probably the same in your context as well. Most of our young up and coming leaders were educated in secular university settings or whatever. So I was just talking last night with one of our religion majors, and I'm like, "Oh, Matt, why did you major in religion, major in communications or something?"
Oh, don't do that.
Stepping into the lion's den. But anyway, so I'm just saying, we owe it to them to ground them in the truth of the scriptures, and to give them the theological chops to be able to enter into this world that is often suspect, if not hostile, to our Christian faith. And so, yes, churches should be doing what we're doing regardless. Leave accreditation off the table, but yeah, where possible, I do think there is some just street cred, that you gain even within your local church, as well as people out there. I'm going to grab my cord to plug my computer. This is awkward. You're recording this.
No worries at all.
Such a professional, you guys. You're really such a professional.
I was gonna say something derogatory about you while you were away from the mic, but
it was really fast.
You didn't give me enough time.
The cord was close by.
Feel free. Okay.
You got a lot of gray hairs now, Jeff.
I do. Holy cow.
Jeff, I'm curious if you could speak to something, and not regarding your hair, although, I love counting grays. I'm getting there more myself.
We just got to mention it. We got to get the elephant in the room.
What's crazy is I'm only 24 and I'm totally gray.
Oh yeah, well, it happens. It happens. I'm curious to know just kind of what your experience is or thoughts about just the level of reception in the local church. There's an obvious interest in churches where there's a strong training and leadership environment already. There will be a strong interest in theological education for especially men and women interested in vocational ministry or some type of other other more heavier ministry involvement. I think that will naturally be there. I'd be interested in hearing about kind of your experience and thoughts about how your ministry efforts in theological education have been received in the local church. Have there been significant barriers for individuals entering into that, and or whether that was just something that was there, and maybe there are other environmental factors that you can point to, within the church that would say there was significant interest for these reasons. I mean, Cornerstone is obviously the CST is a great example of churning out like high capacity leaders, but also bringing in leaders with some capacity already. So I'd just be interested to hear you speak to that. What's the level of interest among a congregation, which might include a significant portion of lay people, also 100%. Depending on the context. I'd love to hear some thoughts about that.
Yeah, well, I talk about the importance of what we have found in Midwestern and their desire to come alongside us, but equally, if not more important, is the support that we have from our elder team right here. Like if that wasn't there, obviously we would not be able to do what we're doing, because there
Sure.
are legitimate concerns. For instance, when we first started, one of the things I was doing was inviting some of our connection groups. Those are like our home group Bible studies, whatever you call them in your context, call them connection groups here. I was inviting some of them to step away from leading their connection group for a year, invest in getting theologically grounded more, and then jump back into serving in that way. Well, when you're a local church of any size, those are really important people. They play a really important role. And the idea of pulling them out of that vital ministry to just sit in a room and read books and think about theology, can to some people might seem like, what a waste, keep them, we need them on the front lines, don't take them away to, sequester them in some weird theological ivory tower or whatever. So there's some of that rub, like how important is this? And should we really be taking people out of more of a serving mode? But the reality is, on the, especially on the lay, the non-staff side of things, they're busy people. They got full careers, and families and whatever. There's only so much capacity, and what we do on any given Monday night is eclipsed quite a bit by what they have to do during the week to read all their readings and do their homework and stuff. So so on that level, I do think there's a little bit of a rub probably with any local church of what we ask of people. This isn't like just showing up to a men's group or a women's group, and if you just show up, you can just enter in. This takes a lot out of people. But our elder team, I have to say also, huge kudos to them that they have been boldly in favor of what we're doing and are excited for it. And a handful of them have jumped in themselves, you know what I mean? And even those that haven't are very excited about what we're doing. And I check back a lot. So even when we had to redo our memorandum of understanding, went back to our elder team, of which I'm one, but I mean, went back to my fellow elders and said, hey, we've got to redo this. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Like we're re-upping. And is there any negative that you're seeing from what we're doing? Any correctives you want to bring? I'm going to keep going full steam ahead, but speak freely if what you like. And so we've had just nothing but great support internally here at Veritas. So and then those like for instance, one of our first couples that came through it, both the husband and wife came through together, stepped out of leading a connection group. They were fantastic. Jumped back in and are better equipped to be connection group leaders. He has now emerged to become one of our newest elders. So I think they're seeing that trajectory. It didn't create people that want to stop serving Jesus and only want to think great thoughts and read theology books. It actually did what we hoped it would do, is ground them, equip them, and empower them to actually get back out and be even better at what they're doing in serving this church, So I'm really grateful for the support that we've had on all sides. But it's also, on a staff level, I mean, they give me the freedom to give as much time and effort as I do to this theology program. You know what I mean? So that's those time and hours that I'm not giving to discipling dudes or whatever, so there is a cost for sure for churches to do this. And when you got limited resources and limited people to do things, it might seem to some like a waste of time or something, but I guess here I've not had to fight that battle very much. I've had a lot of support.
That's certainly an important factor that, I think at least among peers that we hear that level of buy-in might be present in the congregation for a program like this. There's at least an interest, but without significant buy-in from the leadership of a church, especially primary teachers on a Sunday morning, there's little ground to forge ahead, not only at the organizational level, but just even at the level of helping people see a vision for how this fits into, I mean, we use the language a lot of the discipleship ecosystem of the church. Like there's little vision for like not only how that fits into what our church is doing to make disciples, but how does that then trickle down and fit into my life? Like, why is this important for me to stay up late on a Tuesday night studying, a systematic theology textbook? So that's helpful to kind of hear you approach it from that perspective. Matt, I hope I'm not jumping too much ahead, but I would be interested on that topic. Some of what's in the background of this question is that there are a couple of higher profile examples of churches trying programs like this, and discarding it, moving a different direction. And some churches.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Vaguely.
You don't think about that?
Remind me.
I'm being coy, but I think that there's that. You especially hear about this in contexts where larger churches, well resourced, a lot of people involved in these things. I think it's happening, at least from what we're hearing from peers, even at smaller scale, that there's at least significant friction from people interested in this type of ministry and just not being able to get buy-in from the eldership. I'm curious, like, do you think of any individuals or ministries right now presently that you see really leading the way in this area of ministry, of theological education in the local church?
Man, I wish, honestly. It's not like I have this maverick spirit where I want to be the only one out here. I mean, I wish this was happening in a more robust way. I would love to draft behind a half dozen other local churches doing a better job and are further down the road than we are.
Yeah.
So I don't imagine at all. Well, number one, that we are the only place that could do this. I'm sorry that more churches aren't doing it, because Matt can testify, I'm not the brightest bulb on the circuit. Like, if I can get a couple of doctorates, anybody can. I'm just saying, like, it takes some work and effort, to be prepared as a church to take this on. And it takes a higher level of learning on at least one or two or three leaders to prepare them to teach at that level. So there's a huge cost involved in this. Yeah. But again, we're not the only ones that have that kind of capacity. There are churches all over who have the kind of people that would be willing to pay that kind of price to do it. Learners then that would love to be taught at that level if somebody would just get out there ahead of them and so forth. So it's in many ways a little bit scandalous that it's not happening more often. And what I'm saying I enjoy with Midwestern, there are other seminaries also. Well, Midwestern is seeking to do this in other places, and other seminaries also seeking to do it. So I'm just saying, like, it's not like it can't happen, or it's not achievable, or we're just some unique unicorn that could only do it. Not at all. It's and you're right, a couple people who have tried, from what I hear, some are saying, well, no, instead of doing that, why don't we just have our students do it online through seminary A or B or whatever? Well, there is nothing that can replace in-person training. Ask anybody that's gotten the formal degrees using this medium right here, Zoom call, and praise God, it's now available in this way that people can get degrees and live remotely. I'm grateful, right? Again, but best case scenario, discipleship happens when you're not only being taught by somebody that knows more than you do, but we actually are in person. So last night, I'm talking in real terms about conversations I'm having with either unbelievers or brand new believers or suffering people. I'm talking about the ministry of the Holy Spirit, but infused in that is my pastoral work of real in time, people that they've even met. And I'm just saying we incarnate that in that moment. Right. And so, it is not an impossibility. I'm so sorry that churches that used to be flagship churches in this have decided to step out of the batter's box altogether. I don't understand why, but I think, man, I think more leaders should aspire to this. Men and women should aspire to this. I just got done meeting with our women's director, who is phenomenal at what she does. And I'm just like, other people could do what she's doing. Other people could do what I'm doing. Why? We're not actually uniquely created or gifted or skilled with this stuff. And so, I mean, that's absolutely,
That's something Matt and I have talked about a lot recently, is that we feel a bit of an obligation to even advocate for this in spaces
Yes.
where we can and have a voice, because there are many individuals interested in this. And, I don't want to speak too flatly. I mean, churches and churches have legitimate reasons for, questioning the authenticity of the programs like these themselves, like, and I don't mean because there's not the significant fruit from them, but in just trying to account for like an overall ministry strategy, may have difficulty wrapping their minds around something as a proof of concept that has like lasting ability to interface well with the rest of the ministries in the local church. Like, I understand that. But at the same time, like, we feel this responsibility, certainly, to help advocate for it wherever possible. And
Yes.
I guess in the assumption and with the conviction that it's worth whatever rub exists
Yes.
in the way of figuring out how to make it work. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of churches, especially at scale, have and are experiencing that right now. And that might be a significant detraction from moving ahead. So it's helpful to hear you kind of represent that from the perspective of, doing it in a way that's working well, not only in interfacing with the academy, but is seen as not only valuable but cooperative with the rest of the overall ministry and mission of the church.
Yeah, and
It's
the
helpful.
thing is too, this can be a really beautiful, and I use the word in its best way, ecumenical thing too. Like, there are a couple other
Yeah.
churches in our area that don't have the capacity to do what we're doing. So for us, we don't take individual students or even like online individual students. We just don't feel like we're equipped to do that very well.
Yeah.
But if you can form a cohort in your local church of students at like minimum of 3, you can either come to our program. If you live within a driving distance, you can come and do that, and you sit at a table, you have that cohort thing, or you can even do it remotely. Like I was saying, we've got our a group of students in Thailand, even, that because of the 12-hour difference, when we meet at 6 p.m., they're meeting at 6 a.m., but they meet together in real time, in real person, a lot. So I'm saying we want to help other churches do what we're doing. So yeah, figure out how you could, within any given community, another local church or 2 that maybe you could combine efforts and find, a cooperative spirit in that, because it is a little bit, it's a lot, it's a big stewardship, you know what I mean? So, but
Yeah.
work hard, it's worth it. Like, figure it out and work hard. And what we're hoping is that we can give a couple other churches enough of a head start that they actually could assume this exact kind of ministry in their own context, but hey, if we can at least get you started and see a model of it in a healthy way, man, go do it. We really are not the only ones that should be able to pull this off.
So
Jeff, I don't want to read between. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Michelle.
So on the flip side of that, what if there was a church, elders that want to do something like this? What kind of advice would you give them? The things they should be thinking through or planning to help them, like to help equip them to start something like this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one is the train. You've got to have leadership, that's willing to take it on. So you've got to have, for me at least, again, because of the accreditation thing that required that I get a doctorate. I didn't have my first doctorate until we started this program and realized that accreditors required that. And I'm looking around like I'm like the least likely person to have a couple doctorates. I've never actually really liked school, which is kind of the divine comedy of this whole thing. But I'm just saying, but what I realize is, okay, if that's just one of the costs involved, okay, I'll do that if that's what it's going to take in order to pull this off. So I'm just saying, you got to look around and say, do we have the kind of person? And if you're not interested or accreditation is not a high value, totally support that world also. Still, somebody's got to have the acumen. Somebody's got to have the chops to be able to teach at that level. So do you have that kind of leadership that's somebody's going to take this on? When Matt and I first redid what was then CST and became VST and stuff, I mean, we had stacks of books, and which are going to be primary textbooks and which are going to be readings that we can just use PDFs from, and which, like, it takes a lot of work to put this thing together. It sounds the aspiration of it is really great, and then the devil's in the details. Like, oh, we've got to have a syllabus for this. Oh, we've got to actually have
Mm.
books that we pick out, and all. So I'm just saying somebody's got to take that level of leadership. So I'd say start there. Is there somebody that's actually willing to take that on, men and women who that's the gifting and the stewardship they feel like they have in that local
and
church.
Jeff, let me jump in. Don't forget your second point, but I'm just gonna say, like, you moved from church to academy.
Yeah.
There are hundreds and hundreds of guys out there with PhDs and women out there with
Yes.
PhDs who could make the move the other direction. And I think this is one of the hurdles that we face, is that because they're different social groups and the value systems of church and academy are so different. Like, it seems to me that a lot of churches have this governing assumption that once you get a PhD, you can no longer talk to ordinary people.
Yeah.
And so, like, go do your thing, play your weird games, that's fine, but we don't have a place for you. I'm just here to say, I think that it's possible to actually learn to talk to real people again after you do a PhD. So you can check with my supervisors on that. But
Totally.
I mean, in all seriousness, it takes a while to be reacclimated into the church environment, but there's a wealth of resources. Like, look around in your city about people who have done PhDs and want to serve. Like, there's possibilities of pulling people into leadership in that way too. So
or get a hold of Midwestern or other seminaries. Like the seminar that I just led through, I had 10 PhD students. All of them, none of them were demons, all of them PhD students, but all of them vitally involved in a local church. And at least I'd say half to 2/3 of them wondering, what's next? Once I get this PhD, is there going to be a place for me in my local church, in any local church out there? So to your point, exactly right. Even if they weren't raised up from within, which is kind of the ideal. Like, if there was a local church that could take somebody through a discipleship process and watch them emerge, that had the culture of your local church, the language of the local church, the just relational connections with your local church, that's the ideal, right? That they would kind of climb that academic ladder and then teach. But if not, if that person doesn't exist right now, absolutely, there are other great leaders in other contexts that already have that PhD or whatever and would be glad to jump into a local church to do this. So
I interrupted you though. Did you have a point too?
Probably.
I'm sorry.
This gray hair you've already pointed out. Here's what I was going to say. Once you find the leadership, then you also have to be honest, look in the mirror and be honest. Like, is there enough student body out there? Is there really a true hunger? Like, even if you wish there was that true hunger, does it really exist? So even here at Veritas, I believed that there was, and I think the first year we had maybe 30 students or so that showed up. And then I kept thinking, like, oh, surely we've now drained the swamp. Like, that's all that there's going to be. Like, that we're not going to be able. So I'll throw it out there for a second year. Maybe we'll get half that. More actually signed up the second year. And so once again, I had this insecure moment of like, okay, well, now surely all those that ever wanted to do it have already gone through it. And like I say, now we're up to 50. So I'm okay if we end up doing this every other year. I've always been okay with, like, oh, we don't have to keep doing this, just, rev up the engine. I've got other things I could do, But there is actually, once the momentum starts, there's a whole lot more people out there that are saying, oh, I've heard about this VST thing. Could I jump in? Could I do that kind of thing? And so anyway, but you have to ask that question. Is there actually a hunger and a desire among your church congregation for this?
Yeah. So I want to ask the maybe more pointed question. Like, if there's an elder of a church listening to this, how does this fit into your overall discipleship strategy?
Yeah, I think in some ways it's like the cone or whatever, in other words, everybody should be discipled, obviously that's the Great Commission, but the level that we're doing it at is essential for everybody, or is everybody in the congregation ready for this level? No, probably not. In 1 John 2 language, you've got children, you've got young men, you've got fathers. And I'm just saying there's this gradation of discipleship. So do we have enough people that could really benefit from this? But here's the problem though. I mean, so like here we are in Iowa City, here I am, I guess, in Iowa City, clearly far and away the most secular city in Iowa, at least, you know, and very progressive. I mean, like in the last Republican caucus, there's 99 counties in Iowa. 98 of the counties went one way. One tiny little dot of a county went the other way, and that's the county I live in. I'm just saying, like, we are very, very progressive. So our church, if we decided just to coast and to only take discipleship to a certain level, our church would be unprepared to face the culture and citizenship of the community that we live in. We have to be sharper. We have to have at least some of our people discipled in a way that can engage our worldview, you know, the worldview of our culture, with precision and with confidence and boldness. And so, and we're not alone. Like, you all have your own cities and communities. You could give your bio, you know, of your communities. I'm just saying, no, everybody doesn't need this level, but some in our church community do. And we have to be able to give an answer to those that oppose the Christian worldview, or to those that are, at least, you guys, one of the reasons I thought I was going to be late to this particular call is I ran to the gym. Thus, I'm glad we can't smell through the medium we're using. That came right from because one of the trainers then came up to me during the workout, and he's like, can we talk afterward? Totally secular Catholic, knew I was a pastor, had heard me on this podcast, blah, blah, blah. And wanted to engage me on some really intricate worldview questions that he's really having an existential crisis that included Catholicism and secularism and humanism, and he's using all that language. I'm just saying, church, you have to be prepared for those kind of conversations. Not everybody does, but somebody in your church has to be prepared, because those people exist in your neighborhood and in your gym and in the school that your kids go to and right across the street. And so anyway, I'm probably rambling on too much, but I feel passionately about this.
Yes, yes.
We need to disciple at this level, because if we're going to reach people for Christ, it demands that we have this level of discipleship offered.
You guys have any other last questions? We do have a lightning round too here.
Oh,
I'm ready for the lightning round.
Yeah, I say we keep
Can't
the
wait.
space open for that.
All right. Okay.
is it going to hurt? Does the lightning round hurt?
Well,
it depends what your answers are, I guess.
So fun.
Yeah. I wish we had thought of a few more, but this is all right. Let's roll then. So, favorite theologian. This is just one word phrase answers quick. Favorite
Bavinck.
theologian. My follow-up question was, why is it Bavinck?
It's in the notes. It says Bavinck, obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know it's lightning round. Let me just say
Okay.
this. It's not because I think that Herman Bavinck brings a load of stuff that's brand new to Reformed theology. It's just that he writes with such worship and awe and reverence. So I do think he's tight theologically, but it's actually the manner in which he communicates it, and the fact that at the end of his years of teaching, he chose to himself synthesize it down to the wonderful works of God, so that the average person could read what he had written in volumes, now brought down into street level. That tells me something beautiful about the man as a discipler and a pastor, not just a great thinker. So anyway, I'm huge fan, not just because of what he thinks, but the way that he communicates, I think, is beautiful.
Book you're reading right now.
Oh man, how many am I reading?
Francine Rivers, right?
What's that?
Francine Rivers, right?
Yeah. Actually, okay, I'm going to throw you a curveball on this. I have been recently, Brandon Patterson is a fantasy writer.
Yeah.
I have been introduced, Tolkien was the only kind of fantasy literature, and I don't even know if it's classified fantasy. To me, that was the only fantasy literature. I've been recently introduced to fantasy literature. And so one of the things that comes to mind right away is, secular fantasy literature. And it, for me at least, when I have my nose into things like Bavinck so much, it's kind of delightful to get taken to a whole nother world. And
Yeah.
think,
I think you mean Brandon Sanderson, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, you said Patterson. Okay.
Oh, did I?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I just read.
Once again, I'm
pronunciation,
just going to point to
actually.
the gray hair. Yeah, correct me along the way, Matt.
Okay.
I'm assuming that you're understanding what I
Yeah.
meant, not what I actually said.
Best book this year.
Oh, best book this year.
It's 2024.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Best book this year, I would have to, you know what? Once again, I'm going to throw you a curveball. I am going to say The Horse and His Boy.
Very good. Good.
Because I every few years go back and reread Narnia, and that one especially leaped into my soul. I don't know if I was more prepared for it this time or whatever, but The Horse and His Boy just took me to new heights. So yeah,
you can preach one more sermon in your life. Last sermon, what text you choosing?
Isaiah 66, 1 and 2.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's where God is saying through Isaiah, where's the house you're going to build for me? I even told you how to build a temple. Do you think that's what's going to really catch my eye? I'm not going to be impressed with what you build for me, an edifice for me, a temple, even by my own direction. This is the one that I esteem. He was humble, contrite of spirit, and trembles at my word. And so if we could get people at every level, whether they're brand new in Christ or been walking with Christ for a very long time, they could capture that, like, I want to catch God's eye. It's not going to be by doing great things or leaving my mark in the world or whatever. It's going to be, am I the kind of person who starts with humility, definitely a broken, contrite spirit. I truly tremble at the word. What God would do through a church filled with people that are Isaiah 66 to people, we'd all be cities on a hill. We would all be shining brightly on a hill. So.
Okay, you got to say yes or no first on this. I'll give you a moment to explain, but should someone do a seminary PhD?
Yes.
Okay.
You said someone. You didn't say everyone.
Anybody, any random person. Yeah.
Here's the deal.
Because my answer is always no until they convince me otherwise.
So earlier I said this and I really mean it. You guys, I literally walked into every classroom I've ever been in believing I was the dumbest one in the room, and it was usually objectively true. I believe that if you have a teachable heart, if you really want to know, I'm a curious person. I want to know the scriptures. I want to know the God of the universe. You can do that. And I think sometimes people in the room that I'm teaching in realize that I'm on the dumb side of the scale, and that even gives me a little more street cred with people. You know what I'm saying? So don't undervalue or think that somehow you don't have what it could take to finish a PhD. But I believe that we've got to have more doctors out there to teach and train and equip God's church at that level. And so not everybody shouldn't, but anybody could. And I want to empower them to do so. Meeting Matt was really intimidating because he's a real PhD guy. I feel like I skidded by, and I'm grateful that I had to do it to do what I'm doing now. But not everybody has to be a Matt Lapine. You don't have to have his level of brilliance in order to get a PhD.
What are you doing for joy and rest these days?
Well, I'm heading back to Zambia. That's in many ways, it's a lot of work when I get there. We do a lot of pastor training in rural areas with pastors that can't get to any kind of formal training. So we help them. We help a lot of children that are orphaned and help with a feeding program and agriculture work and all that. But also now we've been able to start a clinic because, again, now having come to Iowa City, we got doctors and nurses everywhere. Been able to start a rural clinic and then planting churches from that. So honestly, some of my most refreshing times, most of my best friends are when I get to Zambia. And so gets me out of this world and into a very different world. And I admire the daylights out of brothers and sisters in Christ who have so few resources compared to what I have, and are going to hear a big, bold welcome and well done, good and faithful servant from Jesus when they get there. And I've told them it oftentimes. I'm like, hey, when we get to the new heavens and the new earth, and you're wearing this crown that is so heavy, like you can't even hardly keep it on your head, can you just find me in the back row somewhere and at least acknowledge me as somebody that you knew back in the day? Because I mean seriously that there will be great reward for some of the most unrecognized people on this planet. So it is really refreshing for me to get back over there. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I'm not going to ask you why Iowa State is better than Iowa at football. I'll give you a pass on that. But who's the best former coworker you've ever had?
Wait,
oh, Matt Lapine.
wait,
Matt
I feel like
Lapine.
that is a trick question. That is a trick question thrown in there.
Far and away, not even
well,
a distant second.
Okay, maybe the last one. What makes you hopeful about the future?
The young leaders all around you guys. I mean, just last night, I mean, we get done. We meet for 2.5 hours on a Monday night. Most of them have been working all day, everything else. And then there's the queue of people waiting to ask their question even after we're done, and hearing the kind of questions they have, their aspirations in life, their hunger to know. I am so confident and hopeful about the future of the church every time I leave that room and see the hunger for God's truth and their desire to teach others. So that gives me great. When I just pick up the newspaper or see the latest headlines or look at election results or whatever, I can be like, oh, and then I step into a room with some of those aspiring young men and women, and I am just so filled with hope. Yeah.
Well, Jeff, you are officially off the hot seat. Thank you so much for joining us. I have so much gratitude for you and for what you've taught me, both as a mentor and a friend, and just the time that we got to spend together. My hope is that we can get together again soon. I don't know, you probably know that I still have your doctoral dissertation on my shelf. So I rescued it for you, but now I'm just keeping it, I guess.
I
appreciate
it. Have you read it though? That's the real question.
Have you read mine?
Okay, fair. That's all of us that do all that work and then realize us and our first second readers are the only ones on the planet that ever actually read the thing.
All right. Well, thanks again, and we'll CC you on this when we send it out to our.
That'd be awesome. Hey, thanks for all you guys are doing. Man, pour more kerosene on all of your efforts. It's worth it. I'm grateful to meet you guys and to hang out with you again, Matt. So
okay, sounds good.
You guys.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Well,